we started this company, we looked at counterculture as a key platform. So you're already doing it, Brett. You're influencing the industry. So we're going to do a couple things that are pretty ambitious here today. So bear with us a little bit. We're presenting on technology, and we're relying on AV, which is always very difficult. So I 3 years ago got a call from Chad Robertson from Tartine Bakery out of San Francisco, which is a revered bakery, which really had one bakery on the corner of 18th and Guerrero. But they had 4 cookbooks that were James Beard Award-winning cookbooks, and he was looking for a coffee partner. And so I started the Coffee Manufactory with him 3 years ago. And it was really intimidating because Tartine is best in class, right? So you have to build a coffee company that's best in class. And I had a long career, but this was the first time I was a founder, so I had the opportunity to start from scratch. And so we started a company that said, we're going to ask, like Brett said, the tough questions. So we really started it as more of a sourcing platform, and we took the opportunity to say, there's a lot of things, whether it's price to producer or the way that certification works in the industry, we're just going to ask those questions. So this is a slide not to focus on my experience, more my age. So I remember when I started in the coffee industry, I remember my first trip to Ethiopia. And I went with a bag of money and no cell phone. I told my wife, I'll talk to you in 3 weeks. And there was very, very little access to technology. And when I go back to Ethiopia now, almost every farmer has a cell phone. There's ATMs everywhere. I think the nicest hotel I've ever stayed in the world is in Addis. So it's incredible to be able to see the change in technology in the world since I started in the industry many, many years ago. So I started as a barista. So again, really embarrassing photos. So at Starbucks Coffee in 1992 with 80 stores. I paid my way through college that way. I became a cupper after that. And then I was in roasting and manufacturing, built roasting plants in London, Amsterdam, and since in Santa Cruz and now downtown LA. You guys can look right out here. The row, you can see right here, we're building a 40,000 square foot coffee roastery and bakery as we speak. So then I went to TechnoServe and I was on the ground. So I really wanted to, and this was really deliberate on my part. I had a huge self-confidence issue. I wanted to know everything in the whole entire supply chain. So I got deep in every piece of this industry, and I feel super grateful to be there. So as I mentioned, we collaborated with Tartine, and it was an interesting conversation. I was actually planning to start my own coffee company. And what I was going to do is I was going to take 20 years of experience and I was going to apply that knowledge. And when Chad called, he started talking about food systems, and he started talking about collaboration, and he started talking about wanting to learn more and more. And I realized I want to be a part of that. I want to be part of learning. I don't want to stop learning and just apply my knowledge. And when we started talking about the Coffee Manufactory, he started talking about grain. And grain is obviously incredibly important to Tartine as a bakery, and he was working in those supply chains in a very similar way that I believe that we should work in coffee. So the Coffee Manufactory, we took that name because manufacturing means made by hand. And so we believe that there's many, many hands that are important to be able to bake bread, to be able to grow grain, to be able to grow coffee, to be able to process it, to be able to ship it. But at the same time, we're talking about scaling craft. So if you ever have a chance to come visit us here at the Row, we're taking what Chad started in Point Reyes, which is baking in a wood-fired oven, to a facility down here that's world-class, state-of-the-art. We're deploying every technology from Czechoslovakia to Japan to California, and we're trying to make craft scalable. And so we were talking with many different partners, and we were actually talking with Amazon. And we were talking with the head of machine learning at Amazon, and he said, listen, at the end of the day, it's always about inputs and outputs. So what are you trying to do with your bread and your quality of your bread or the quality of your coffee? And as long as you know what the output should be, all you have to do then is figure out what the inputs are to be able to be successful. So we're really trying to be able to scale craft, but in a human way. This is our roastery in Oakland. So the shifting dynamics, we're going to talk about two kind of pieces here. I was talking to Brett earlier that I'm a little new to the third wave because I left the US in 1999 and I came back in 2013 and I missed the whole thing. But I did get a piece of it when I was in Africa. So I was at the Gates Foundation. We had huge success in helping farmers build co-ops, learn about accounting, install wet mills, learn about processing. But the biggest success that we had was the ability for us to access markets for those producers. So if any of you guys have heard of Kanzu in Rwanda, or Duramina, or Ukro, all of those coffees came out of that, and they're living and breathing outside of a development project that I was lucky to be a part of. So that market access is critical, and so the last 2 years that I was in Africa, my house is a hotel. I had Blue Bottle staying at my house, I had Ritual staying at my house, I had, you name it, we had people staying at the house. And so you had this movement where a third wave was coming to Origin and trying to learn about coffee. And really what was happening there is that learning process, they were doing the best they could to be able to bring that story back to consumers. And sometimes it was incredibly detailed, elevation, variety, processing method. You can see on this bag, it's a lot of information. And it was a necessary step to go through to be able to kind of educate that market. Certification. It's been talked a lot today, about a lot today, and I think I heard a number of $600 million a year spent on certification. And again, I have no issue with certification. It's a very big part of the industry. What's really interesting is how little of it actually is sold as certified coffee. And a lot of us have heard this number. We've seen it over and over again. But it is burdensome on the producers. And what happens is all that $600 million, it's not really landing at farm level. It's with certifiers, it's with roasters, and it's a need from the market. The market's saying we need to trust the product, we need to feel comfortable with the places we're buying are sustainable, and so we're deploying that on those supply chains. And again, totally understandable, but there is certification fatigue. So when we started working at Coffee Manufactory, what we wanted to do to deploy a direct trade model. But we also knew that we wanted to be able to understand what that really meant. We wanted to make an impact. We wanted to make a change, whatever that meant. Ask all the hard questions. And we always came back to sending a verifier to go out and verify what we're doing. And we really wanted to avoid that. And so, because of the certification fatigue, I'm actually working a little bit in Uganda now, and we're going to send SCS, Scientific Certification System, to Uganda, and they said, please no. We've got fair trade this week, we've got UTS next week, we've got all these people coming out, we have no time, we're picking coffee. And it really, really hit at home to us. So we were really trying to move away from that, but at the same time feel like we're making impact and ask the right questions. So, I wanted to highlight a little bit, again, I touched on it already a little bit, but the access to technology is growing like a flywheel. And in Kenya in particular, I have this kind of, this memory of, even in some of the slums of Kenya, there's hackers and development and technology is happening so quick. We've all heard of M-Pesa, mobile technology. That's moving faster in Africa than here. By the way, I get better cell phone coverage in Ethiopia than LA. So the developing world is catching up, and the average median age of those countries are younger, and so technology is happening more rapidly. And so here's where we get kind of to innovation. And we do have just a little bit of a heads up. Hopefully we have 2 of our partners in Colombia and Skagit Valley growing grain that will join us in a little bit here. But innovation, we're really looking at innovation as a platform. And what we've done is we've developed with SCS, without a burdensome on any producers, KPIs, so key performance indicators. And I'm definitely going to provide more questions and answers. But the idea of the KPIs is, isn't there, with the certification fatigue and the square root methodology where there's a lack of trust in what's really coming out of those certifications, isn't there a way to boil it down to more specific KPIs that says this is a sustainable community? And they're the same KPIs that we all know, and I'll show them here. But the innovations that are out there, we're working with a couple different people, including colleagues of mine that came out of Technoserve called Enveritas. Anybody heard of Enveritas? Like David Browning, Carl Servone. They're doing incredible, they have a map, go onto their website, and they are doing drone surveys, and they're showing 10-year histories of deforestation in places like Ethiopia. and they're mapping communities via drones and other technology. We're working with a group called Arable, who's doing mobile weather monitoring to be able to provide crop insurance. You have all these tools that are out there that we believe if you could empirically take some very specific focused KPIs and measure that, then potentially we could make that shift where the farmers are actually owning some of that information, and the farmers, instead of the roasters coming to all of those origins, bringing that information back, the farmers are actually able to own some of that instead of these certifiers or even the roasters.
We're seeing lots of resistance to Roundup. We're looking for other ways to combat the weeds and still have cost savings on top of everything.
We saw an opportunity to take cameras, computers, and artificial intelligence to allow ag machines to see every plant in a field. We thought that we could give farmers the ultimate flexible tool to treat their field and manage their field in whatever way they wanted by having the knowledge of every plant and its situation and an ability to spray very precisely, whether it be herbicide only to the weeds or fertilizer or fungicide directly on each plant that needed it.
Pretty incredible technology, right?
New sensor technology is a great tool in providing data on soil moisture and soil nutrients to help farmers make best use of their resources. Unfortunately, these sensor solutions can cost thousands of dollars per sensor and require many sensors to monitor a field properly. Drones and other imaging technologies can provide very useful data and allow for precise monitoring of land over time. But these devices require a high bandwidth wireless connection from the middle of the farm. To solve our connectivity problem, we utilize the unused channels for TV broadcasts, which are abundant in rural areas. This allows us to transfer large amounts of data from cameras and sensors in these remote areas to a local processor at the farm and out to the Microsoft cloud.
Yeah, so just an example of things that are possible in technology right now. So these are the key performance indicators that we've developed with SCS. We have a lot of detail behind these, and we are actually verifying them. But with advanced equipment, predictive analytics, digital mapping, AI monitoring, and environmental monitoring, we believe that at some point we could get to a time where certification was actually something that was a bit more empirical, a bit more information, and something that would sit closer to the farmer. So if you can imagine the farmer owned apps or owned data or owned technology that will be able to support a replacement for certification. So as I mentioned, so one of the other things to touch on is that I think with all of this technology, at Tartine, we're working with all of the producers that we work with, whether it's tomatoes, whether it's lettuce, whether it's grain, and it's a partnership. And it's the same that we would like to do with coffee. And that partnership, for us running restaurants, it's a very, very difficult business. We've talked about labor and the issues with labor, rents, and it's important for us to be able to have a 15 to 20% margin to be able to make a sustainable business. We look at the producers that we work with in the same way. And so we would like to be able to get enough data to support all of our producers, whether it's a tomato producer, a wine producer, or a coffee producer, to be able to say, this is a viable business. So I wanted to bring in Cairn Springs Mill from Skagit Valley. Hopefully the technology works. And then Valentina Duque from Colombia to talk a little bit more about technology and how it could impact both coffee and grain supply chains. You guys there? Hey guys. Can you hear us?
We can hear you.
Awesome. So you guys, we have, again, Kevin here. Kevin, do you want to talk just briefly about your work with Tartine?
Oh, sure, Chris. We started producing flour in this mill about a year and a half ago, and Chad was the first person here who really embraced and understood what we were trying to do in terms of maintaining the health of our farm economy, maintaining the health of our soils, and feeding people clean food. And so from the beginning, we have worked with Chad and the team to identify and select the grains that work best for the bakery and help us really understand the best applications of the grains we can grow here. And I think we're almost at the 1 million pound flour mark this month as far as production and what we're going to be sending or have sent to Tartine.
Thanks, Kevin. And Valentina, how about a little bit of background on you, your family as a farming family, and the work with Coffee Manufactory?
I'm sorry, I'm having, go ahead.
Hola, Chris.
Hi, Valentina.
So I started my company 2 years ago, and the first person that I was trying to connect was Chris, and I explained to him the idea that I have to having my own company, trying to help a lot the coffee growers, because I saw my family having issues with the prices. So I want to be like the key point here. Quality in Colombia, transparent with the client. So that was the way that we start to work together.
Thanks, Valentina. So just, I'm going to pose just a few simple questions to both of them together. So, you saw the presentation on technology and how it can apply to larger scale farmers. I wanted to talk a little bit about how some of these challenges and opportunities that you guys have and how we might apply that to smaller holder farmers. So maybe, Kevin, do you want to start?
Sure, Chris. I think it's important to mention that small-scale farmers and large-scale farmers really have similar needs, and you mentioned earlier inputs and outputs. And so, for us, if technology can help us really better understand the real-time needs of soils, the onset of disease, to be more precise in how we apply fertilizer, or if we need a chemical intervention. All of that really comes down to helping us improve our bottom line, helping us improve the quality and health of the soils, and hopefully the quality and yield for our customer. I think some of the challenges are accessibility and cost, and I heard that in the video you played. And that is something that we don't have the answer to, and we would love to find ways to partner and overcome that. I have a friend who's, we're 70 miles north of Seattle, which is one of the tech hubs of the world. And by the way, I still can't get internet and cell service at my farm, so maybe I have to move to Kenya. But a friend's developing some AI technology for potato growers. And I asked him if he could do that for grain. He said, sure, but it's only going to be cost effective if you're farming 500 to 1,000 acres or more. Most of our growers and what we produce are on anywhere from 10 to 100 or 150 acres. So that's one of our biggest challenges I see, is the accessibility and cost moving forward.
Yeah. And Valentina, how could technology help? You have even smaller producers. How could it help, and what are some of the challenges?
So I think in coffee is a little bit different, and here in Colombia I think is more. 95% of our coffee growers are small coffee growers, less than 5 hectares. So I think the challenges are the lack of education. Some of them, they don't even know how to read or how to write. So it would be very difficult for them to understand part of the technology. Also, the internet is very limited in rural areas, so we should try to solve that part. And I think the road infrastructure here in Colombia is still kind of a big issue, because most of the places you don't even have access by car, so you have to go by I don't know, by horse or something like that. So it will take longer to get there. But I think that the opportunities that we will get with that, it will be like they can get a better understanding of their costs, because right now they don't have a very of that. So we will get more access to traceability. We will be able to know how much coffee they are selling and to whom. Maybe better quality, because they will get like a quicker or faster access to quality results, so they can change things in the farm during the post-harvest. It will be easier with new projects.
Fantastic. So just quickly, I know that you'll have very different answers on this, but over the years, what role has technology played, and how has it changed from when you first started farming? Start with Kevin again.
Well, how far back do you want me to go, Chris? I guess the point in time for me that I remember technology really coming into play was in the early 70s, when we had a new director of the United States Department of Agriculture. His name was Earl Butz, and he was famous for a couple quotes. One was, you either get big or you get out of agriculture, and you want to plant fence row to fence row. And it really began the proliferation of technology in the form of new machinery that could plant, harvest, apply chemical fertilizers, growth regulators, all of these things that at the time seemed like a really advancement technology in farming. And that continues today. The costs and the outcomes of that, of course, we all know aren't great. The other thing that has really advanced and continues, and where it could probably use more technological assistance, is wheat breeding. So most heritage wheat breeds were historically 5 to 6 feet tall. Their heads were fairly small, their yields weren't great. And through modern wheat breeding techniques, the breeders were able to create varieties that grew well in different climates, that had a shorter stalk, that had a higher yield. That's been a benefit if used correctly. In other places where it's just used to grow grain that's higher yielding and might even have herbicide resistance, I'm not a fan of that. But there's been a continuation of that, and now we have the debate on GMO, which I'm still kind of trying to understand better. But the technology advancements have been really focused on production at scale. And I think, thankfully, we're entering into a new age now.
Great. And Valentina, talk to me about how technology has become a part of farmers' lives since you started the business to now.
So I will say that we have like 3 different type of technology advance, like large farms. For them, it's been easier to have all the information about their costs. All the processes, like post-harvesting process, has been standardized, and they lower their costs. Also, the contamination about the water when they're washing the coffee, because in Colombia, most of the coffee is fully washed. When they have access to internet, I've seen that they already have the information about the market, so they know how much it costs the coffee in Colombia. So the small farmers are a little bit different, but at least they have a cell phone, so they can communicate with buyers or the co-ops or FNC. They have been having the support of FNC with all the agronomists. So they have information, they have database and everything. And the machines that they got from the co-ops or whatever for the post-harvest, have, so they lower the costs a lot. But in general, in coffee, I think that here in Colombia, the FNC has been able to develop some resistant varieties, like rust resistant, so that helped a lot. Also, more productive ones. The relationship between the buyer and the supplier, like the coffee grower, has changed a lot. So they can come here and speak with them. They know who is buying the coffee. I think that all the controls in the port. So in Colombia, they know exactly the amount of coffee that has been exported. And I think that all the production statistics, I think.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys for your time. I know that you're super busy.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you soon. So again, by the way, AV worked for us today a little bit, so a little choppy, but pretty good. One of the other things that we're doing, again, we started really small so we could try to make a difference and understand more. So we work with very specific producers, people that we know. Part of the philosophy in my life, now that I get to be a founder, is that I get to hang out with people that I want to hang out with. And so we're really lucky to have Kevin and Valentina, who are people in our supply chains that are really truly partners. The other thing that we're doing on the price side, which really goes back to Brett, like ask the question, and I think it's a very, very difficult question right now with where the market's at. It's what is truly a sustainable price for a producer? And it's the same model that we have for our restaurants. We have to be able to pay our employees. We have to be able to cover our cost of production. We need to be able to make a margin so that we can make this a viable business, whether it's for financing or whether it's for saving for the down years. And we really believe that we're looking at that price in our supply chains to make sure that we really understand that. We're being really honest with ourselves about that. And of course, it's complicated because it changes from supply chain to supply chain. So thanks for your time. Again, I really can't say more about following Brett and Counterculture. They've done an amazing job, as well as everybody else. We're in Korea now with Tartine. It's an unbelievably beautiful market. So it's been a pleasure to be with everybody here today. So thank you.
Thank you so much.